Hello and welcome to another Karmik Channels broadcast. Throughout this Karmik Channels original Time to Heal series, we will be interviewing practitioners in their field of expertise in order to assist you on your journey back to health, mind, body, and spirit. Today we have in studio a professional astrologer at Mystic Heart Astrology. It's time to heal with Saleem, Adam, Wolter. Welcome, Saleem.
Thanks, Ron. Glad to be here.
Saleem, would you please tell us a little bit about your background, how it was growing up, and give us some of your origins?
I guess it's important stuff. I was raised by two older parents, only child. So there's a little bit of enmeshment trauma in the foundations, let's say.
Nice.
And so I've always been a very emotionally sensitive creature. Yeah, I went to a Waldorf school, and so Mother Nature helped raise me a little bit. It was beautiful, the playground that we had. The first few years there, I feel like some willows and a creek and some pine trees were really also helped me learn some stuff when I was little. Yeah, I didn't find out about astrology till after I had a brain injury. When I was 17 years old in high school, senior year of high school. So a real shift in my life direction. Yeah, woke up from that accident, not being able to remember 1 minute to the next and being in more pain than I've ever felt chronically for months. And yet there was this new love like I'd never felt before that was in my system, and answered the question, is there a higher power? And whole body was like, yes. And so that kind of kicked off a quest for some mystic truth. And I've been wandering a lot of places. Found somebody who got me to stick my nose into astrology one day, and it blew me away.
How long ago was that approximately?
It was 20 years.
Wow.
20 and a half years about, yep.
So would you consider yourself a self-study, or you studied with that person that you met and others?
You know, so much of it has been, self-study and just experimentation. It's like there's a renaissance in the astrological communities, I don't think I can call them one organism, of traditional astrology techniques and Hellenistic astrology, and these old texts being translated for the first time into English and being widely disseminated. And so there's kind of a dogmatic, old school, by the book club that's stepping into the seat of power in the astrology world. And that's very, while I study the Hellenistic astrology and I use those tools for understanding charts, it's much more a psycho-spiritual, totally subjective adventure for me. But magic, the clouds part and magic happens all over the place.
So you called it Hellenistic?
Well, that's the traditional astrology. I use some tools of Hellenistic, but I'm a little more aligned with evolutionary astrology.
Okay.
Studied a little bit with Stephen Forrest. And there's another evolutionary astrology school that I also take some hints from, but don't buy into the whole shtick. It's more person by person, like I dive in deep, and trying to learn how to dive in a little less deep so I can give people shorter sessions, but
You're pretty passionate about it.
I put a lot in,
Yeah.
How far back does astrology go, historically?
Astrology is where science came from. I really think.
Yeah.
I mean, before we had words, before we had any way to, before the spoken word, we were noticing the lunar cycle. When is bright, when is dark, that meant something. When here Venus, you can right now, she's so bright in the western sky after sunset, and 8 months as evening star, and then switches sides, and 8 months as morning star, and watching these different, what does it mean? Like, that was such a curious question from day one, like, every culture is aligned with the living sky. I think a block in Western mind to it, it's like it really fell out of grace in the, don't quote me on this, but I think it was around the 17th century, 18th century. The 1700s where it really lost its validity. I mean, you know, Galileo, Copernicus, Aristotle, to go a little further back, but professional astrologers, you know, the founders of Western science and Western thought and medicine, Hippocrates.
Did it fall out of favor because of like religion, or was it just people had a change in consciousness overall?
Well, you know, the Enlightenment really changed things, went a little more of a science angle, and if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And I think the other part of it was the printing press, because with the dissemination of Farmer's Almanac, astrology wasn't such a professional thing. It wasn't a respected office for somebody to hold. Like, I mean, in the Catholic Church, maybe the wrong venue, but in the Catholic Church, all of the popes had personal astrologers.
Right.
Until in 1700s.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah, and all the kings and all the queens. And so when the printing press became available, Farmer's Almanacs started going around, and it was cheapened by that because it wasn't personalized interpretation.
Right.
In 1930 was when the sun sign horoscope column was invented. That's a pretty new creature, and you know, that creature had me thinking astrology was a crock until somebody got me to actually do the science for myself and watch the living skies happenings in real life, in my own life.
What was it that attracted you most to pursue astrology?
The fella who introduced me to, he's got a lot of anger in him. And he's got a lot of righteousness. And he kind of took me under his wing and said, "I'll tell you the secrets of the universe. Nobody else gets the secrets that I'm sharing." And I can't say I entirely supported that flavor, but part of me really liked that, because I'm not so good at feeling and expressing anger. And so here is someone with some badass righteousness that I could learn about from. It was a little bit of a damaging relationship, because he always told me, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about." I'm like, "Oh, you're right. Okay, I need to study more."
Yes, master.
So, I mean, some different wounds around astrology, because when I found out it was real, I went telling all my friends and relatives and everybody, and so much rejection in that process. It's interesting watching. I mean, I'm excited about the wave of more creatures tuning in and more chart software being easily available for people. And
Oh, yeah.
I think it's great to put the tools in everyone's hands. I used to say, I want to teach everybody astrology. I want to teach everybody that astrology is real, but I don't think everybody's cut out for doing full readings, because holy goodness, it's a lot of knowing. I really see astrology as a gateway drug to higher consciousness. It just helps more magic connect when you start tuning in real time with it.
Well, is there any experiences or events that stand out in your mind that may have been a persuasion to you towards astrology?
Yeah, my parents had the record Hair.
Oh.
And I love listening to that record. Yeah. When the moon is in the seventh house. So it was funny realizing later on, and I actually, that's how people used to know me, was the guy with bushy long hair. My daughter still hasn't forgiven me for hacking it off.
How could you do that?
Yeah, and music was, in the Waldorf school, and singing in the Minnesota boy choir. I think, that was an important formative experience for me too, was singing in the boy choir, and we would go and sing different church services. Mm-hmm. I was raised very agnostically. Parents never pushed anything, went to Unitarian church once in a while, but then boy choir got to see organized Christianity and singing in these different, and feeling such different, wildly different energies inside of different worship spaces. And so, I lead Dances of Universal Peace now on a universalist path of study of just sipping from every cup I can, you know, sitting down with every embodiment of the message of divinity in our world, like, oh, let's get high on this together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, how to fit my music in with my astrology is, I'm hoping some good comedy and songs come out of it one of these days.
Yeah, you do add a hint of comedy when you're doing a reading with somebody, and I suppose you have to.
Yeah, I love digging right into the sticky stuff, and sometimes getting giggly about it isn't the best way.
Yeah.
So how to dive into deeper stuff? It's like I have a really big heart and hold a really sacred space. But it's an interesting mix because it's a very light heart that I also bring to it. And
I can only imagine how many of your friends in your circle, your tight circle, reach out to you quite often about what are the stars saying today, you know, and that. So I suppose, do you get suffocated with that, or you just take it as it comes?
no, I don't get suffocated by that. People over the years have been better and better. I've been clearer about expectations with it, and you know, what friends are in the know who want to talk about it, and what, you know, the few friends who are regularly in crisis and want to talk about it. I love them to pieces. So.
Yeah. All right, cool. What do you think is the best way for someone to use astrology?
Oh, well, I think astrology it's a language to learn. You know, it's a multi-dimensional language. Studying it about yourself, I think a big limitation, like with sun sign stuff. You know, one thing that pushed me away was like, oh, this is going to tell you who you are. And I don't want someone else to tell me who I am. And I think that's a very healthy response, a resistance. But really, when you study your chart and the chapters of your life through its lens with some help from a good teacher, professional, can really untangle the knots of identity, the knots of attachment to negative meanings and negative outcomes of our life, just the corners that we trap ourselves in. It's about freedom. It's really about waking up more parts of our being to who we want to be, and finding out that our beauty is already reflected in the sky, and the sky is inside of us. It's a bigger connection that's also freeing.
When you do birth charts for someone, and maybe you can explain for people listening what birth charts are, but what role does that play in kind of helping them in their life?
Well, I'm a very wet being, AKA lots of air and water. Some astrologers are more dry beings, fire and earth. So I'm getting clearer and clearer that it's like, I shouldn't say the word, but it's more psychotherapy with me. It's like I'm a mirror and a channel. And so the messages of the moment that someone took their first breath, or the moment they opened their business or started their marriage, and how the sky is relating to those charts now, helps me to create the container and to tell some of the stories that are going to set off the ripples of resonance that pull out the awakenings that are happening for this person, pull out the rememberings and releasings. Whereas a more dry astrologer, probably someone to go to for all of the nitty-gritty of the right times to do things, the right action plan, the right, you know, I do some of that for clients, but that's not my love. My love is opening up this deep heart space and crying with clients and laughing with clients and just really catalyzing deeper soul healing, just helping them remember how loved they are by the universe. So.
Do you recommend people check their horoscope every day?
No, I don't. I think I might write some horoscope columns one of these days, just for the fun of it. I think I'm finally ready to give up on my dogma around how evil sun sign astrology is. Because it can be really fun. Before I found out astrology was real, things started getting weird when I looked in the City Pages, local weekly magazine, and found the Free Will Astrology horoscopes of Rob Brezhny. And I had a few experiences where I just decided to read it, my sun sign, for shits and giggles. And lo and behold, like to a T, preposterous things. It was like, you might run into a cat with green eyes this week that has a message for you. And then I would run into a green, like, what is this?
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's funny I still thought astrology was BS, but Rob Brezhny was like telling me the truth. I was like, we got some special connection. I have one friend who has pushed me toward that, just like, Saleem, honey, you're a channel. That's what you're here to do. Let's just listen. You know, the people who are ready to hear what you have to share, they'll hear it. Just go ahead and let it move.
I know there are quite a few astrologers out there that do horoscopes. Yeah, I see you more as a channel. I see you more as a audio type, delivering your messages that way. Do you speak to groups of people, audiences?
Well, a couple times a month I do a forecast for the month, and then I've started doing an embodied astrology night where I teach the Sufi planetary walks.
Oh, cool.
From a teacher. Yeah, different breathing and prayer practices to attune to the different energies and explore those in our own charts and in each other.
Would you please explain for the listeners what the Sufi, what that entails? What is that about when you say Sufi teachings?
So Sufism usually means esoteric Islam, but this particular brand of Sufi that the Ruhaniyat Sufi order that I'm part of is very universalist, that there isn't a requirement to be Muslim or anything in particular. You know, my mentor, who I learn music and practices with, follow helpful guidance from, he was raised Orthodox Christian, then was a hippie, then found Zen Buddhism, and he's a Zen Buddhist teacher, and he's also a Muslim, and his own ways, you know. So it's kind of, the Sufi pot is full of lots of originality, but lots of sacred presence. So it's like, how do we harvest the beautiful gifts of healing that are in our different religious traditions without crushing ourselves with the dogma and delusions of separateness that...
Is there any difference between how you practice astrology versus others in your field?
Oh, bless us all, yes. Yeah, different practitioners can be very, very different. You know, there's some schools that all buy into the same dogma, but it's the map, not the territory. Mm-hmm. And each of us builds an original living relationship with that living map. And it's a real challenge with astrological community because it's a very heady study. There's a lot of how-to and details and interpretations and lots and lots and lots more than can be studied in one lifetime. And we all find our different dogma around it. We all end up with our own stuck ideas about it, and then we talk to each other and it's like, you're wrong. There's so many face-offs in astrology community because there's so much mind energy that gets in the way with it. I'm excited that it's growing now, though. I mean, this age that we're in, with World Wide Web and Zoom meetings and more and more chances to connect.
So what's the most profound lesson that you have learned in your work?
Most profound lesson I've learned in my work? Oh, it's a tall order.
You've got a list.
We're all dancing together. Planets and people and ants and trees and rocks and distant stars. It's all alive and conscious. and beautiful. So deeper beauty, I think, is the biggest lesson. Yeah, life is gonna hurt, lots, and again and again. You're gonna get stuck, lots, and again and again. And there's indescribable beauty and deliciousness that's available every moment of the ride.
Are there any specific client success stories that stand out in your mind?
Let's just say the repeat experience with clients is people often come in when they're having a tougher time, and understanding the timeline of that, when this is center stage, this month, a couple months later, and a couple months later, and then it's going to be getting a little bit lighter after that, like feeling dense times. It's so helpful to have our experiences validated. So the clients who've been helped most are ones who are living some pretty challenging lives because they are so emotional. That's who I help most, is those who are just very extra sensitive to some very difficult life circumstances. We all walk through trauma, but emotional trauma, I think I help some creatures to find the ground and to find validation in their experience and optimism about releasing that and trying things in a different way, getting out of the comfortable stuck zones.
So what are your interests or hobbies outside of work?
I am a musician. I play guitar and cello, and I sing, and Dances of Universal Peace every month, and really hoping for some more bandmates here someday soon. I dedicate a lot of my life to dinking around on the guitar. Have given myself to procrastinate any time with music, and so I take advantage of that a lot. Music is kind of a big one for me.
So what's your professional perspective of our current events that we're living through right now?
Well, 2020, hallelujah. It's a lot of stuff hitting the plate. And it has been for a few years, Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, the collapse of the economy, and that was a big kickoff. A little bit before that, 2001, 9/11, that was Saturn in Gemini opposing Pluto in Sagittarius. Just in response to your question, what's happening right now? What's on the plate? And I want to go off in 5 different directions about a few different major happenings that I see. But the biggest punchline of it is around a big kerfuffle in Capricorn. That's been helping us all, pretty much everybody, to feel really anxious and stressed about making ends meet, about taking responsibility, about noticing the knots that we're tied up in from our personal history and from our collective history, just really, really facing these karmic power struggle stories and ways that we've given our own power away. Saturn now moving into Aquarius, and Jupiter will also be meeting up with Saturn in the beginning of Aquarius, this winter solstice of 2020. And there's a call going out. Capricorn's about the past, Aquarius is about the future. And just to put those two next to each other, it's like since 2008, Pluto's going through Capricorn. 2023, 24, Pluto moves into Aquarius. So here's another big turning of ages, but Saturn just having moved there first, who's a pretty important creature. Capricorn is concerned with accomplishment. Capricorn is concerned with being responsible for everything, being in control, the dynamics of control and power over. and time itself. Capricorn is and Saturn very watching the clock and fitting everything inside of a concrete time box. Now Aquarius brings out a different energy of Saturn, which is much more, Earth, the earth element Capricorn is dry, and the air element Aquarius is wet. So this is about connections. And so we're waking up in this time to our responsibility in how our actions affect the next 7 generations, how our thoughts affect our neighbors, how our energy bodies are intermingled with each other, how every time 3 of us sit down for a conversation, there is a fourth being that's in the room, which is the collaboration of our hearts, minds, beings, intentions. Mm-hmm. And so just there's a new wave of collaboration on deeper levels that is being woken up in this time.
Do you think transparency would sum that up as far as what we're currently going through, that transparency is a big part of it?
Well, I think the whole gang in Capricorn, Pluto in particular, this is about really powerful secrets and power games and what conspiracy theories are true and which ones aren't. I don't want to put my money anywhere clearly, but it's freaky stuff. And how do we not get tangled up in giving our energies away to power systems that are out of our control? That power to the people is definitely an Aquarian call. It's like we need smaller groups of collaboration. Our ideas of value, our models of value are outdated. It's time for updates in our experience of what value is and finding out that it's all alive. I think that's the biggest thing. And just conscious collaboration for being responsible for one another, caring for each other's children in more ways.
Because the current events are having a worldwide effect, do you think that the strong leaderships of other countries, or any country for that matter, rely on astrology or astrologer to give them advice and tell them what's going on with the stars?
I wonder. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, famous people have done it before and they'll do it again.
Yeah.
I'm more focused on just the one-on-one processy part of it. I'm always sticking my fingers in big picture stories and trying to act like I know something about it, but it's not where my gold's at.
Okay.
Oh, I guess the last thing about the big picture story, 2020, I'm excited about Jupiter's making 3 conjunctions with Pluto, which we get some exaggerated experiences of intensity with power stuff and authority, power structures, and what you got to do according to who. So some energy that can really separate us from one another. But then there's 3 sextiles happening to the planet Neptune in Pisces, which is basically an invitation to write a better story about where you came from. Write a better story about what's happening now. I've been loving to pieces the work of Byron Katie. Just simple technique for unraveling the thoughts that are running our lives. And so more of that is like, you don't need to have a concrete definition to value your experience in this life, rather than resisting the process of integrating different wounds and different stories and different things we've identified with. It's like, how can we get more playful with our story of this world in a way that gets us working together more effectively? That's kind of my thinking of it.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds about right. Did you have
wanted to
anything you wanted to add?
Oh, yes. I did want to add that I'm really excited. I'm part of Holistic Gateway, and we are moving from Northeast Minneapolis to a new space in Little Canada. And April 1st is our opening date, middle of this quarantine we're in.
And April Fool's Day too.
April
you'll be
Fool's Day.
doing this
Yeah, I guess
remotely?
that kind of came full circle already.
Yeah, someone said April Fool's Day was canceled this year because we couldn't possibly get any better than this, right?
Yeah, but I'm really excited about the team. Just we're moving it to a more collaborative space where there's going to be. I'll be doing my dances. There'll be different ecstatic dance events and meditations, and someone will be at the front desk all the time. And so that's a new project.
Wow.
Holistic Gateway.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Saleem, for joining us today, and I hope we get to meet with you again sometime soon.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron and Jill.